Hi,
Well,
thank you. Thank you very much for that introduction, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. I would like to build on a number of the themes that Eldad introduced, and I think thank you, Eldad, for this excellent introduction to our conversation. First, in discussing or even considering what we mean about peace, and when we talk about peace in the Holy Land, peace within the broader region, and to be honest, I think in our particular historical moment, peace within the world as well. I think it's worthwhile distinguishing between peace as the absence of war and peace in a liberal sense, which is a sense which it is broadly under attack in this particular moment, which is based more specifically on ideas of human freedom, the promotion of human freedom and of development, and also linking peace with international norms and international institutions. Dr. Pardo discussed the peace treaty with Egypt, which was, on the one hand, part of a very broad understanding of realpolitik and a vision of how the world could move still during the time of the Cold War, as picked up both by Sadat and then launched forward as well by Kissinger and then Carter, together with Sadat and ultimately Menachem Begin, but leading towards what was at the time and still remains a cold peace, but was a peace in the context of broader international institutions that are now under attack. We have, on the other hand, a sense of peace as being promoted, I believe, by people like President Trump at this time, as well as I think in this moment by Israel's current Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and also the other major leaders within the region. Which peace is really ultimately an absence of war. So we have the idea of a cold peace as being something that is not of great concern, because we don't think we can actually escape from it. What I would like to do really is look at, first of all, some of the broader issues that we need to be focused on, as well as a number of recommendations that I have. In terms of the issues, I think it's quite critical while we speak about, and we will frequently discuss peace between Israel and the Palestinians. I believe, especially now, and unfortunately to the detriment primarily of the Palestinians, and I think also of Israel, it is impossible to separate any kind of discourse on peace between Israel and the Palestinians and the broader dynamics within the region, which involve the Sunni Shiite split in the Gulf, Russia's re-engagement with the region, and the United States pivot away. So the regional peace is really what we're speaking about. We're in an economic point, again, at this historical moment, which has only been worsened by Corona, where many of the states face significant economic threats. This tremendous push by Saudi Arabia, for example, led by MBS, to engage in a tremendous amount of development to push the Saudi economy away from being an overt reliance solely on oil, and also to bring the Saudi people, as well as the people of the broader region, to a place where the government would be able to manage reforms. There's another question of whether the Saudi government wants to manage broader reforms, because they've only taken baby steps, but that now has been pushed farther back by Corona. There are countries like Iran, which have been hit very tremendously by Corona, and that is coming on top of the maximum pressure that has been put forward by Trump as a campaign to press the Iranian regime to make concessions, both in terms of its political relationship with its neighbors within the Gulf, and also specifically on the Iran deal, on the JCPOA and the nuclear arrangements. So all of these are things that are economically, the region is in a worse situation. We have tremendous leadership challenges in the region. I will just focus very, very quickly on two, really. Specifically, we have a tremendous influence that is going to be played by the American election and the tremendous conflict of what's happening within the United States. That is being reflected within the region on how the United States is pursuing its relations with all the actors, and most specifically with the subject of annexation, which can have a tremendous impact. And then within Israel itself specifically, we have a Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, who right now is already on trial for crimes, and his own political needs internally is going to tremendously affect how he's going to be acting within the regional issue, and that is of great concern. That continues on to stress on Abbas and Yahya Sinwar within the Palestinian region, and all of the other actors within the region. I'll get very quickly, because I understand my time is quite short right now. But in terms of recommendations, the first is really we need to do as much as possible to avoid miscalculation by any of the leaders in the region. In the region and also outside, I include the United States and Russia, for example, as leaders that should try to avoid miscalculation. Russia so far has been quite careful. The United States, I'm not as certain about. Most of the wars in the United States or within the region have been based to a great extent on miscalculation. The 1967 war was a war that was based on miscalculation and changed the face of the region. Miscalculation now between a triangle involving the United States, Israel, and Iran has the potential to be hugely destabilizing and dangerous to all the peoples of the region. I think the way to do that is by trying to increase predictability, developing better mechanisms for clear communication between the actors, and also enhancing deconfliction mechanisms. We have examples of very good deconfliction mechanisms involving the United States and Russia, and we need to look at how we can possibly enhance that in the future. In the Palestinian arena, I think we need to avoid any kind of major steps around the subject of annexation. This is a much broader topic, so I know that time is short, so I'll leave that there as something that I hope people will refer to. But I also want to note that annexation, there's an issue of annexation, and then what do we mean by annexation? Because some possible plans involving a two-state solution actually also involve land swaps, which is Israeli annexation and Palestinian annexation of Israeli land, Israeli annexation of Palestinian land under an agreement. So it's the idea of moving land around and changing borders is not in and of itself a problem, but the problem is how are we doing it, and are we doing it within a sense that is predictable and in a sense that the peoples of the region believe is leading towards peace and believe in leading towards their best interests. And then one other thing which I think is really quite important is also because there is such a, at least within the Israeli-Palestinian arena, there's such a focus on the question of annexation and whether it will or will not happen in July, and whether it will or not happen at all, and whether it will or not happen within under an umbrella of broad United States support. I think it's quite important to look as well at steps short of annexation. There are a number of steps that can be taken by the current Israeli government and that may be beneficial, especially given, as I mentioned, the leadership challenges that Netanyahu faces, steps that will help advance internal political interests, such as construction within the E1 area of adjacent to Jerusalem, between Jerusalem and Ma'ale Adumim, which can have tremendous impact on changing the nature and the whole framing of a possible future Palestinian state with territorial integrity. And I think that's something, or contiguity. And I think that's something that needs to be looked at. Other things that need to be looked at, steps short of annexation, are things like further moves in Jerusalem, increased Israeli settlement within, or construction within Jerusalem and Jerusalem neighborhoods, redrawing the municipal lines of Jerusalem to keep Palestinian neighborhoods, outlying neighborhoods outside of the municipality, which are again unilateral steps. If taken unilaterally, can be profoundly destabilizing. And then the other issue is the subject of demolitions within Area C, which is an area where, under at least the Trump plan as it's being discussed, about 50% of Area C will be absorbed into Israel. I think there needs the idea of miscalculation with Iran is something that needs to be looked at very carefully, and we need to ensure that Iran, on the one hand, there need to be clear messages from the West to Iran that the aim of overthrowing the current Iranian regime and seeking regime change is not the purpose of current policy, not by the United States and not by Israel. Certainly not for the moment. I think it's going to take a long time before any kind of trust is built up between the sides. And then the other issue is making it very clear what the implications will be should Iran seek to advance its nuclear program beyond certain lines. That is already something that is extraordinarily dangerous. There was a period of time, a grace period, that the JCPOA, the Iran deal, was offered all of the actors. We have now lost that. We need to find some way. The idea of getting back to a new Iran, an improved JCPOA under current circumstances seems very, very unlikely. But we need to make it clear that any move by Iran to take unilateral steps with respect to nuclear weapons is will lead to very severe steps. That should not come as a surprise to anyone.
Dan, I'm going to, if I can just jump in a minute, if you want to finish that sentence.
Yeah, if I can just say one last thing, and I will, and this is really it'll be 20 seconds, and excuse me for the time. Just the final thing, Eldad, you very beautifully noted the Shavuot holiday that Jews in Israel and Jewish people around the world are celebrating. I usually spend the holiday with a very special family, the Madanis Levy and Hirschfeld family in Kibbutz Nachal Oz, which is a kibbutz along the Gaza border. When I think of what makes it so special is, well, there are a couple of things. One is just they represent for me the possibility of building on quite a difficult and challenging past forward, a new and peaceful and just society. And I think that's actually when we look at possible ways forward, in addition to warnings, which I believe I gave, the possibility of building forward. And Eldad also mentioned the role of the Israeli Arab minority in doing this. There are peoples in the region that are still able and willing and desirous of moving forward, and we need to build on that. Thank you, and excuse me for the time.
Just a